The Pearl Harbor Paradox. Prologue. The Black Shadow over Oahu. The first attack wave swept low over the Pacific, engines humming in perfect formation as the sun crept over the horizon. The Japanese pilots could already see the quiet sprawl of Pearl Harbor ahead, battleships lined like sleeping giants, unaware of the storm about to break over them. Lieutenant Sato tightened his grip on the controls of his Zero. This will be over in minutes, he thought. A clean strike, a decisive blow, a glorious victory for Japan. Then something flickered in the corner of his eye. A shadow. At first he thought it was a cloud, a dark smudge against the brightening sky. But clouds didn't move like that. Clouds didn't cut through the formation with silent, predatory precision. "Captain," Sato radioed, "unidentified aircraft at our—" The shadow dropped into their formation. Not a plane, not anything built by human hands. A black shape, smooth and angular, its surface swallowing the morning light. No wings, no propellers, no sound. It hovered for a heartbeat, as if studying them. Then it moved. A beam of white fire lanced outward, slicing through 3 bombers in a single stroke. They didn't explode. They simply disintegrated, vanishing into drifting ash. Sato's breath caught. "What is that thing?" Panic rippled through the formation. Pilots broke ranks, engines screaming as they tried to scatter. The black craft pivoted effortlessly, tracking them with cold, mechanical precision. Another beam, another formation erased. The sky filled with burning fragments and spiraling wreckage. The Japanese attack wave, the most feared strike force in the Pacific, was being butchered like insects. Sato dove, heart pounding, trying to escape the slaughter. He looked back once. The black craft was behind him. Close, closer. Its surface shimmered with shifting patterns of light, like a storm trapped beneath glass. For a moment, just a moment, Sato thought he saw a face reflected in the hull. Young, determined, human. Then the beam fired. His world went white. Below, the sailors of Pearl Harbor looked up in confusion as burning debris rained into the water. No bombs fell. No torpedoes struck. The attack that should have defined a century never arrived. Instead, they saw only a black shape streak across the sky, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. A shadow out of time, a warning of things to come. Chapter 1, Polaris Temporal Command, Antarctica, 2083. The alarms began their banshee wail the moment Stuart Allen stepped into Hangar 19. But he didn't break stride. He moved like a man possessed, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the impossible machine waiting at the far end of the cavernous chamber. The Meridian Ghost. A temporal battle cruiser the size of a small destroyer, its hull shimmering with quantum plating that bent the light around it. It wasn't just a ship, it was a weaponized paradox. The first vessel capable of punching a hole through time and surviving the trip. Stuart had helped build it. Tonight he was going to steal it. Boots thundered behind him as security teams poured into the hangar. "Allen, stop where you are." He didn't. He sprinted across the deck, dodging crates and fuel lines, heart hammering against his ribs. His access badge slapped against his chest with every step, the badge that would get him inside before they could shoot him. He reached the ramp, slapped his palm against the panel. "Cyrene," he gasped, "open up." The AI's voice materialized around him, calm, feminine, maddeningly composed. "Stuart Allen, you are not authorized to—" "Override. Allen Protocol 7. A beat. Then the ramp hissed open. He bolted inside as the first security officer fired. The round ricocheted off the ramp's plating as it sealed behind him. Inside the cockpit, the air hummed with power. Holographic displays flickered awake, bathing Stuart in cold blue light. He dropped into the command chair, fingers flying across the controls. Cyrene, warm the temporal drive. Stuart, the AI said, activating the drive without authorization will... Do it! The ship vibrated as the engines spooled up. The hangar lights flickered. Tools and crates lifted off the floor as the gravitic field expanded. Security forces pounded on the hull. Allen, shut it down! He ignored them. He keyed in the coordinates he'd memorized years ago. December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor. 7:48 a.m., the moment before the first bomb fell, the moment his grandfather died aboard the USS Arizona. Cyrene's voice sharpened. Temporal drive at 70%. Stuart, this action will destabilize. I don't care. He tightened his grip on the controls. I'm not letting him die. The ship shook violently as the drive reached critical mass. The hangar warped around them, walls bending, lights stretching into streaks of white. Temporal drive at 90%. Security officers scrambled for cover as the distortion field intensified. A few fired again, but the bullets curved away from the hull like they were afraid to touch it. Stuart exhaled once. Cyrene, jump. The world collapsed into a single point of blinding light. Then it shattered. Chapter 2. The Sky of Ash and Steel. The Meridian Ghost ripped out of the time stream with a thunderclap that shattered the quiet Hawaiian morning. Air detonated outward in a shockwave that rattled windows across Oahu. Stuart gripped the controls as the ship stabilized, its hull glowing with residual temporal fire. Below him, Pearl Harbor lay peaceful and unaware. Above him, death was coming. The Japanese first wave crested the horizon, dozens of A6M0s, B5N torpedo bombers, and D3A dive bombers slicing through the morning sky in perfect formation. Cyrene's voice was steady. Temporal insertion successful. You are 32 seconds ahead of the first attack run. Stuart stared at the incoming fleet, heart pounding. Targeting systems online? Online. A black swarm of zeros sliced through the sky in perfect formation. Stuart didn't hesitate. Arm everything. The ship responded with a rising hum, plasma conduits charging, gravitic rails aligning, targeting arrays locking onto dozens of aircraft at once. The first Japanese formation broke into attack vectors. Their engines growled like a single monstrous heartbeat. Stuart fired. The sky erupted. A wall of plasma fire tore through the lead formation, vaporizing aircraft mid-flight. Wings melted, engines detonated, pilots vanished in blossoms of white-hot light. The survivors scattered in panic. Stuart dove after them. The Meridian Ghost cut through the formation like a blade, shredding aircraft with gravitic pulses that crushed metal like paper. A Zero tried to flank him. He flicked a control, and a microshield flared outward, slicing the plane clean in half. Below, sailors on the USS Arizona stared upward, frozen in disbelief as the heavens turned into a slaughterhouse. The second wave arrived at more than 100 aircraft, and Stuart plunged straight into the heart of it. Cyrene, full spread. Confirmed. The ship unleashed a storm. Plasma bolts stitched across the sky, carving through bombers in rapid succession. EMP bursts detonated in the center of tight formations, frying engines and sending entire squadrons spiraling into the sea. Gravitic lances snapped fuselages like twigs, the air filled with fire, smoke, and falling wreckage. A torpedo bomber dove toward Battleship Row in a last desperate run. Stuart caught it in a tractor beam, crushed it into a ball of twisted metal, and hurled it into another formation. The explosion lit the harbor like a second sunrise, but the battle wasn't over. Cyrene's tone sharpened. Carriers launching emergency squadrons, fleet attempting to retreat. Stuart's jaw tightened. Not happening. He banked hard and dove toward the ocean. The Japanese fleet came into view. 6 carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, the most powerful strike group in the Pacific. Stuart armed the heavy weapons. Siren, Star Lance. A beam of pure, focused energy erupted from the cruiser's prow, slicing through the Akagi's flight deck. The carrier split open, flames roaring from its guts. The Kaga turned to evade. Stuart fired again. The ship detonated in a column of fire. Anti-aircraft guns opened up, filling the sky with black bursts of flak. The Meridian Ghost flew straight through them, shields shimmering. Stuart launched gravitic torpedoes. They struck the Soryu and Hiryu, crushing their hulls inward like collapsing soda cans. Explosions rippled across the ocean as the carrier sank beneath the waves. The battleship Hiei fired its main guns, massive shells arcing toward the cruiser. Stuart flicked a control. A gravitic pulse caught the shells midair and hurled them back. The Hiei vanished in a fireball. Silence fell over the harbor. The entire Japanese strike force, air and sea, was gone. Stuart exhaled shakily. Siren, locate Daniel Allen. Forward deck of the USS Arizona. Alive. Stuart brought the ship down. He saw him, young, laughing, unaware of the inferno that should have claimed him. Not today. He activated the tractor beam. Daniel lifted off the deck just as a crippled bomber, the last survivor, released its payload in a final act of defiance. Stuart fired a micropulse. The bomb detonated harmlessly in the air. The Arizona remained intact. Daniel Allen was safe. And the timeline screamed. Siren's voice trembled. Stuart, you have just altered a fixed point in human civilization. Temporal integrity is collapsing. Stuart didn't care. He had saved his grandfather. He had saved thousands. He had destroyed the Japanese fleet. He didn't yet realize he had doomed the future. Chapter 3. The First Fractures. The Meridian Ghost hovered above Pearl Harbor like a shadow that didn't belong to the world it occupied. Smoke from the destroyed Japanese aircraft drifted across the water, but the harbor itself felt wrong. Too still, too quiet, as if the air were waiting for something that would never come. Inside the cockpit, Stuart lowered his grandfather gently to the deck. Daniel Allen staggered, bracing himself against a console as he tried to make sense of the impossible. What is this place?" Daniel whispered. Before Stuart could answer, a faint crackling sound rippled through the ship. He turned. A thin line of shimmering distortion crawled across the bulkhead, delicate, crystalline, like frost forming on glass. The metal beneath it thinned, becoming translucent for a moment before settling into a ghostly half-state. Siren spoke softly, but her voice carried an edge Stuart had never heard before. Temporal erosion detected, structural integrity compromised. Daniel stared at the thinning metal. "That's not natural." "No," Stuart said. "It's not." The distortion spread another inch. Siren continued, her tone clinical but strained. "The paradox created by your intervention is unraveling the vessel. The Meridian Ghost exists because of a timeline that no longer leads to its creation." Stuart swallowed hard. "How long until we lose major systems?" "Erosion rate increasing. Estimated loss of propulsion in 32 minutes. Daniel's eyes widened. "The ship is dying." "Not dying," Siren corrected. "Being erased." Stuart turned toward the cockpit windows and then froze. The harbor flickered. For a heartbeat, the USS Arizona vanished, replaced by a different battleship with a different silhouette and a flag he didn't recognize. The coastline shifted shape. Buildings rearranged themselves like pieces on a board. Then everything snapped back. Daniel stumbled backward. What the hell was that? Cyrene answered immediately. Temporal shockwave. The timeline is attempting to reconcile the removal of a fixed historical event. Stuart forced himself to breathe. Show me. Cyrene projected a holographic map of the Pacific, but it wasn't the one Stuart knew. Borders twisted, nations flickered, entire regions pulsed with instability. Daniel stared at the map. That's not right. None of that is right. Cyrene zoomed in on East Asia. Japan's defeat occurred prematurely due to the unexplained destruction of its strike force. The empire collapsed within months. A power vacuum formed. The map shifted again. China fractured into multiple competing states. Southeast Asia was a patchwork of unstable territories. The Soviet Union's borders pulsed, expanding and contracting. Daniel whispered, "What about the war, the big one?" Cyrene paused, a glitching hesitation. There is no global conflict as you know it. Without the attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States did not enter the war. Without American intervention, the European theater diverged significantly. The map zoomed west. Germany's borders were larger, Britain's were smaller. France flickered between occupation and partition. Daniel's voice cracked. So we changed all of that? Stuart clenched his fists. I changed it. Another tremor shook the ship. A console flickered, its display dissolving into static before winking out entirely. Cyrene's voice dimmed. Memory core degradation at 4%. Historical data loss imminent. Stuart spun toward the AI projection. You're losing the timeline? Yes, Cyrene said. The paradox is erasing the information I need to guide you. Daniel stepped forward. What happens if she forgets everything? Cyrene answered without hesitation. Then the timeline collapses. Permanently. The ship groaned again, a long, low vibration that traveled through the deck plates like a dying heartbeat. Outside, the harbor flickered once more. This time, the Arizona didn't return. Daniel's breath caught. Where's my ship? Cyrene's voice was almost gentle. In this branch of the timeline, the USS Arizona was never constructed. The attack that justified its deployment never occurred. Daniel stared at the empty water, horror spreading across his face. Stuart felt the weight of it settle on his chest. He had saved one man and broken the world. Cyrene's tone sharpened. Stuart, temporal integrity is deteriorating. You must take corrective action. Daniel turned to him. What does that mean? Stuart couldn't say it. Cyrene did. The fixed point must be restored. Daniel frowned. Fixed point? Cyrene projected a single glowing dot on the timeline. December 7th, 1941. Daniel Allen dies aboard the USS Arizona. Daniel went still. Stuart felt his throat tighten. Cyrene continued, unflinching. If the fixed point is not restored, the paradox will escalate. The ship will be erased. The timeline will fracture beyond repair. Daniel whispered, You're saying I have to die. Stuart shook his head violently. No, I'll find another way. Cyrene's voice softened, almost sad. There is no other way. The ship groaned again. The world flickered, and Stuart realized the fractures were only beginning. Chapter 4. The Long Unraveling. The Meridian ghost drifted above a harbor that no longer knew what it was supposed to be. Stuart watched the coastline ripple like a mirage. Buildings stretched, shrank, and rearranged themselves in slow, nauseating pulses. The water shifted color, deep blue one moment, murky green the next, as if the ocean couldn't decide which version of itself belonged. Daniel stood beside him, gripping the back of the command chair. His knuckles were white. "Tell me that's just smoke," he said quietly. "It's not smoke," Stuart replied. Another tremor rolled through the ship, not violent but unsettling, like a shiver running through a living creature. A thin line of distortion crept across the floor, leaving a faint shimmer in its wake. Cyrene spoke softly. "Temporal erosion expanding, internal integrity at 87%. Daniel frowned. "That doesn't sound so bad." "It is," Cyrene said. "The erosion is accelerating." Stuart knelt beside the distortion line. The metal felt cold, impossibly cold, like touching the skin of something that wasn't fully real. "How long until we lose propulsion?" he asked. 26 minutes. "And life support?" 40. Daniel exhaled slowly. "So the ship dies before we do." Stuart didn't answer. He was staring out the cockpit window again. The harbor flickered. This time, the USS Arizona didn't return. Instead, a massive industrial complex sprawled across Ford Island. Cranes, dry docks, smokestacks belching steam. Workers in unfamiliar uniforms moved across the platforms like ants. Daniel's breath caught. "What is that?" Cyrene projected a hologram, a new timeline branch pulsing red. "In this divergence," she said, "the United States never entered the Pacific War. Without the attack on Pearl Harbor, naval expansion followed a different path. Ford Island became a manufacturing hub for a prolonged arms race." Daniel stared at the hologram. "Arms race with who?" Cyrene hesitated, a glitching pause. "With everyone." The hologram zoomed out. The world map was a patchwork of fortified borders, militarized zones, and unstable alliances. No clear superpowers, no balance, just tension. Stuart swallowed hard. A world without a unifying enemy. "A world without unity," Cyrene corrected. Another tremor shook the ship. A console flickered, its display dissolving into static before fading to black. Daniel stepped back. "This place is falling apart." "Not just this place," Cyrene said. "Reality itself." The harbor shifted again. The industrial complex vanished, replaced by a barren crater filled with black water. The sky darkened, clouds swirling in unnatural geometric patterns. Daniel grabbed Stuart's arm. "We need to get out of here." "We can't," Stuart said. "The drive's unstable." Cyrene's voice dimmed. "Temporal integrity at 79%. Daniel turned to Stuart, eyes hardening. "You know what has to happen." Stuart shook his head. "No, I'm not sending you back to die." Daniel stepped closer. "Look around you. This isn't a world, it's a nightmare." Stuart clenched his fists. "I'll find another way." "There is no other way," Daniel said. "You heard her." Stuart turned away, jaw tight. "I'm not giving up." Daniel's voice softened. "I'm not asking you to give up. I'm asking you to see the truth." The ship groaned again, a long, low vibration that felt like a dying heartbeat. Cyrene spoke quietly. "Temporal shockwave approaching." The cockpit windows flashed white. For a moment, Stuart saw a dozen versions of Pearl Harbor layered over each other. Japanese flags, German U-boat pens, futuristic naval bases, empty wasteland. Then the shockwave passed. The world snapped back into a single version, a version neither of them recognized. Daniel whispered, "How much worse can this get?" Cyrene answered without hesitation, "Much worse." Stuart stared at the shifting horizon, feeling the weight of the impossible choice closing in around him. The unraveling had begun, and time was running out. Chapter 5. The Visitor. The next shockwave didn't hit like the others. It didn't flicker the sky or warp the harbor. It silenced everything. The wind stopped. The waves froze mid-crest. Even the distant hum of the island seemed to hold its breath. Daniel felt the hair on his arms rise. "Stuart, what's happening?" Cyrene's voice was barely audible. "Temporal displacement detected. Something is entering this reality." A low vibration rolled through the Meridian ghost, deep enough to rattle Stuart's teeth. He turned toward the cockpit windows, and the ocean split open. A column of black water rose straight upward, defying gravity, spiraling around a shape that climbed from the depths like a leviathan made of metal and nightmares. Daniel stumbled backward. "That's not a ship." He was right. It was too fluid, too alive. The structure's surface rippled like molten steel, shifting between forms, a hull one moment, a ribcage the next, then a lattice of glowing veins pulsing with colors that didn't exist in any spectrum Stuart knew. Cyrene's tone sharpened. Temporal echo confirmed. Origin, divergent timeline. Stuart's pulse spiked. Meaning what? "Meaning," Cyrene said, "this entity evolved in a reality created by your intervention." The construct rose higher, towering over the harbor. Its presence warped the air, bending light around it. The sky dimmed as if the thing were swallowing sunlight. Then it opened. A circular aperture irised along its surface, a mechanical pupil dilating, and a beam of scanning light swept across the Meridian ghost. The ship lurched violently. Cyrene's voice spiked with static. "Warning. External entity is attempting to synchronize with our temporal signature." Daniel grabbed the console. "It's trying to read us?" "No," Cyrene said. "It is trying to pull us in." The beam intensified. The Meridian ghost groaned as if caught in a gravitational tide. Panels rattled. The deck vibrated. Stuart fought the controls, but the ship drifted toward the towering construct. "Cyrene, thrusters." "Thrusters degraded. Output at 21%. "Give me everything." The engines flared weakly, pushing against the pull. The ship slowed, but didn't stop. The construct responded instantly. Its entire form folded inward, reshaping itself with horrifying fluidity. The ribcage-like structure compressed, the lattice tightened, and the glowing veins aligned into a sleek, predatory silhouette. Daniel's eyes widened. "It's changing shape." "It's adapting," Stuart said. The construct finished its transformation. It now resembled a warship, but not any human design. Its hull was segmented and alive, its weapons grown rather than built, its engines pulsing like a heartbeat. Cyrene's voice trembled. "It is mimicking the Meridian ghost, attempting to replicate our capabilities." Stuart felt a cold dread settle in his chest. "It's learning." The construct fired. A lance of energy tore across the sky, grazing the Meridian ghost's port side. The ship spun violently. Sparks burst from the ceiling. A console exploded behind Stuart. Daniel shouted, "We can't fight that thing." "No," Stuart said. "We can't." He steadied the ship, forcing it into a controlled drift. "But we can outrun it." Daniel blinked. "With what engines?" Stuart pointed at the temporal drive indicator, flickering, unstable, but still intact. Daniel's face drained of color. "You're not serious." "It's the only system the paradox hasn't eaten yet," Cyrene added. "Temporal drive remains functional due to paradox-resistant architecture. However, initiating a jump in current conditions may result in catastrophic—" "Do it anyway," Stuart shouted. The construct fired again. The beam hit the Meridian ghost dead on. The ship screamed, metal twisting, lights dying, the hull fracturing like ice under a hammer. Stuart slammed his hand onto the temporal drive control. "Cyrene, jump!" The world folded, the construct lunged, and the Meridian ghost vanished into the time stream. Chapter 6. The Hunter. The Meridian Ghost didn't exit the time stream so much as tumble out of it. The ship slammed into a pocket of fractured reality, a swirling expanse where sky, sea, and land flickered between incompatible versions of themselves. A mountain range appeared for a heartbeat, then dissolved into open ocean. A city skyline shimmered into existence, then vanished like smoke. Daniel braced himself against the wall. This place isn't real. It's real enough to kill us, Stuart said, fighting the controls. Cyrene's voice was faint, glitching. Temporal coordinates, indeterminate. We are in a transitional zone between divergent timelines. The ship groaned as another patch of hull thinned, the metal turning translucent before stabilizing again. Stuart didn't have time to worry about it. A sharp pulse of energy tore past the cockpit. Stuart jerked the controls. What was that? Cyrene's tone sharpened. Temporal signature detected. Approaching fast. Daniel leaned toward the window. Another one of those creatures? No, Cyrene said. This is a vessel. A second pulse streaked across the sky, brighter, tighter, more controlled. Stuart recognized the pattern instantly. That's a weapons discharge. The air split open behind them. A ship emerged, sleek, angular, and unmistakably human in design, but far more advanced than the Meridian Ghost. Its hull shimmered with adaptive plating. Its engines left trails of blue fire. Its silhouette was predatory, efficient, lethal. Daniel whispered, That's us." "No," Stuart said. "That's not us." The calm crackled. A face appeared on the screen. Stuart froze. It was his own face, older, harder, scarred down the left cheek like a lightning strike. His eyes were colder than vacuum. "Stuart Allen," the alternate said. "You've made a mess." Daniel stared between them. "That's you." The alternate Stuart ignored him. "You destabilized the continuum. You created fractures that are spreading across every branch of time. I'm here to correct that." Stuart felt his stomach twist. "You're a temporal enforcer." "I'm what you should have been," the alternate replied. "A guardian of the timeline, not a vandal." The Meridian Ghost X, the hunter's ship, charged its weapons. Energy built along its spine, forming a swirling vortex of temporal force. Daniel grabbed Stuart's arm. "He's going to fire." "He won't kill us," Stuart said. "He needs the paradox resolved." The alternate Stuart smiled, a thin, humorless line. "I don't need you alive. I need you gone." He fired. The erasure beam slammed into the Meridian Ghost's starboard side. The ship spun violently. Panels burst. A shower of sparks rained across the cockpit. Cyrene's voice flickered. "Shields collapsing. Hull erosion accelerating." Daniel shouted, "We can't take another hit." Stuart fired back, a desperate plasma burst, but the Meridian Ghost X absorbed it effortlessly, its hull rippling like water. "You're fighting with a museum piece," the alternate Stuart said. "Stand down." Stuart gritted his teeth. "Not happening." The hunter fired again. The beam grazed the cockpit, tearing open a glowing wound in the hull. Emergency seals snapped into place, but the ship was bleeding light. Cyrene's voice trembled. "Warning, structural integrity at 42%. Daniel looked at Stuart, panic rising. "We can't outrun him. We can't outfight him. What do we do?" Stuart stared at the alternate version of himself. The man he could have become. The man who believed the timeline mattered more than lives. "I do the one thing he won't expect." He slammed both hands onto the temporal drive controls. Cyrene sputtered. "Stuart, the drive is unstable. A blind jump could—" "Do it!" The Meridian Ghost X charged its cannon again. The vortex reached critical mass. The alternate Stuart spoke calmly. This is mercy. Stuart shouted. Cyrene, jump! The Murdian ghost vanished an instant before the erasure beam hit. The world folded. The ship screamed. And Stuart realized he had just jumped blind, with a more advanced version of himself hunting him through the time stream. Chapter 7. The Fixed Point. The Murdian ghost slammed out of the time stream like a stone skipping across water. Stuart gripped the controls as the ship bucked violently, alarms screaming, hull groaning under the strain of a jump. It was never meant to survive. Then the turbulence stopped. The world snapped into focus, and Stuart's breath caught in his throat. Pearl Harbor lay beneath them, pristine, untouched, frozen in the final calm before history ignited. The morning sun glinted off the battleships. Sailors moved along the decks, unaware of the storm that should have been moments away. Daniel staggered to the window. "Oh, God, we're back." Stuart didn't answer. He didn't need to. This was the fixed point, the moment the timeline demanded, the moment Daniel Allen was meant to die. Cyrene's voice flickered through the cockpit, faint and distorted. Temporal coordinates, aligned, fixed event, imminent. Daniel turned to Stuart, eyes wide with fear and understanding. "You brought us here." "No," Stuart said quietly. "Time brought us here." A sharp crack split the air. A rift tore open behind them, a jagged wound in the sky, pulsing with blue fire. The Murdian ghost X burst through. The hunter had followed. Its hull glowed with temporal energy. Its weapons were already charged. Its engines screamed like a predator closing in on wounded prey. The alternate Stuart appeared on the comm, his scarred face lit by the glow of his ship's weapon systems. "This ends now." Daniel stepped forward. "You don't have to do this." The alternate Stuart didn't even look at him. "I'm not here for you. I'm here for the anomaly." His eyes locked onto Stuart. "You." Stuart felt the weight of that stare, cold, merciless, inevitable. "You broke the timeline," the alternate said. "You destabilized every branch. You created fractures that are spreading across the continuum. I'm here to correct your mistake." Stuart clenched his jaw. "By killing me." "By erasing you," the alternate corrected. "Cleanly, permanently." The Murdian ghost X charged its main cannon, a swirling vortex of temporal force building at its core. Cyrene's voice trembled. "Warning, erasure beam will not destroy the vessel. It will remove the pilot from the timeline entirely." Daniel grabbed Stuart's arm. "We have to run." "We can't," Stuart said. "The drive's dying." The alternate Stuart spoke again, voice calm and cold. "You can't escape. You can't hide. You can only fix what you broke." Daniel turned to Stuart, desperation in his voice. "There has to be another way." Stuart looked at him. Really looked. And Daniel saw the truth in his eyes. "There is," Stuart said softly. "But you're not going to like it." Daniel shook his head. "No, no, don't you dare." "If I die," Stuart said, "the timeline resets. Everything goes back the way it was meant to." Daniel's voice cracked. "You're my grandson." "And you're my fixed point," Stuart said. "I was never meant to be here." The Murdian ghost X locked onto them. The vortex reached critical mass. Cyrene whispered, "Temporal collapse imminent." Stuart reached for the canopy release. Daniel grabbed his wrist. "Please, don't." Stuart placed his other hand over Daniel's. "I kept my promise. I brought you home." Daniel's breath hitched. "I don't want the version of you that comes later. I want you." Stuart smiled, a small, sad smile. "You'll meet me again. Just not like this." He hit the release. The canopy slid open with a hiss, wind roaring into the cockpit. The alternate Stuart fired. The erasure beam streaked toward them. Stuart stepped onto the edge of the cockpit. Daniel lunged for him, but Stuart was already gone. He fell. The beam hit him mid-air, and Stuart Allen, the anomaly, the paradox, the man who broke time to save his family, vanished in a flash of white light. The world held its breath. Then everything snapped. The sky cleared. The harbor stabilized. The ships returned to their proper places. The timeline rewound itself like a film reel snapping back into its spool. Daniel Allen found himself standing on the deck of the USS Arizona, the morning sun warm on his face. He looked around, dazed. No futuristic ship, no grandson from the future, no fractured sky, just the world as it was meant to be. A sailor shouted, "Allen, you coming?" Daniel blinked, and for a moment he remembered everything. Then the memory faded, slipping away like a dream. He looked up at the sky. A single tear rolled down his cheek. "I'll see you again," he whispered. The first Japanese bomb fell. History continued. Epilogue. The man who lived. The world burned. The first Japanese bomb tore through the forward deck of the USS Arizona, and the explosion hurled Daniel Allen off his feet. He slammed into the railing, the metal twisting under the force, and then he was airborne. For a heartbeat, he saw the sky split by fire. For a heartbeat, he felt the heat of the blast on his back. For a heartbeat, he thought he was dead. Then the world dropped out from under him. Daniel hit the water hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs. The shock of the cold snapped him back to consciousness. Debris rained down around him, burning oil, splintered wood, twisted metal. But somehow, impossibly, none of it struck him. He kicked upward, gasping as he broke the surface. Sailors screamed, the harbor roared, the Arizona burned like a floating furnace. Daniel treaded water, stunned, alive by inches. A voice echoed in his mind, faint, distant, impossible. "Move." He didn't know where it came from. He didn't question it. He swam as wreckage crashed into the water behind him. A lifeboat reached him minutes later. Strong hands pulled him aboard. Someone shouted his name. Someone else pressed a blanket around his shoulders. The world blurred into noise and smoke and chaos. But Daniel felt strangely calm, as if he had already lived this moment once before, as if someone had shown him the path through it, as if someone had saved him. He never told anyone how he survived, not the doctors, not the officers, not even his wife years later. He carried the secret like a scar, invisible, but always there. Sometimes, late at night, he would wake with the memory of a face he couldn't place, a young man with his eyes, a voice calling his name, a hand reaching for him through light, guiding him. He never understood it. Not fully, but he felt it. It was a story he would tell his grandchildren someday. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.